Hello, YouTube. India is home to some of the earliest civilizations on this planet. There are excavations, findings, scripts, and seals that show plant habitations existed in the most ancient of times. The history of India has such a glorious and extravagant past and is as old as mythology, but it also has mysterious and sometimes as yet inexplicable pages in this history. Some places, some landmarks attract travelers like a magnet. One of such places is a lake lost among the Himalayan Mountains, a high-altitude glacial lake in the Uttarakhand state of India. Archaeological evidence supports the existence of humans in the region since prehistoric times. The region formed a part of the Uttarakuru kingdom during the Vedic age of ancient India. The lake lies in the lap of Trishul Massif. Located in the Himalayas, the area around that lake is uninhabited and is roughly at an altitude of 5,020 meters, which is equivalent to 16,470 feet. Surrounded by rock-strewn glaciers and snow-clad mountains, Roopkund is the name, and it's a popular trekking destination. The size of the lake varies substantially, but it is seldom more than 40 meters in diameter. 40 meters in diameter, 1,000 actually to 1,500 square meters in area, and is frozen in the winter. Only one mention of it can cause a thrill in the heart of travelers, and I've heard of people going there. The banks, paths, and the pond itself are strewn with human bones, creating a gloomy atmosphere. What caused the deaths of hundreds of people? Who were those unfortunate people whose lives were swallowed up by the skeleton lake? Legends about this lake have been around for a long time, but they didn't go beyond the nearest settlement, so to say. Information about the lake became public in 1942. Then a new forester appeared in the Nanda Devi Reserve. Hai Madhaval was his name. Exploring the territory, he wandered through the villages. Residents in one community told him an ancient legend. Thousands of years ago, the great goddess at Mount Nanda Devi punished pilgrims who went to the Forbidden Lake. The old-timers of those places claim that there are many remains of people in the late Roopkund who were punished by the angry goddess. In the late spring of 1942, Madhaval found a path to the lake. The forester wanted to see with his own eyes the glacial lake of the national park. When he got to the place, he saw hundreds of skeletons among the water and melted snow. The forester summoned the British colonial administration to show them his find. The first hypothesis of the British military intelligence came after they began to study the remains. At that time, there were raids by Japanese sabotage groups. This was during World War II. The British considered the Japanese victims, but a detailed analysis of the fragments of clothing showed that all the victims were not our contemporaries. People on the shore of the lake died several centuries ago. In 1958, India gained independence, and several archaeological projects have been funded as part of the preservation of cultural heritage. In the 1960s, Lake Roopkund became the most important object for study. And this is according to the Russian information, by the way. They're also very much interested in India. Archaeologists have found utensils and rings on the shores of the mysterious lake. Radiocarbon analysis of the artifacts allowed dating the finds to the 8th century AD. A second hypothesis was put forward. The victims died as a result of the conflict of warring tribes, but it looks very unlikely. There's nothing to fight for in this area. There are no cities or fortifications. Many have tried to find a solution to the strange discoveries. Finally, a good reason for the hostilities was named: the water of the lake. The war for fresh liquid is not uncommon in the regions where there are dry seasons. This assumption about the battle for water seemed quite reasonable until new data appeared. Not all those who fought were adults. The remains of children and teenagers were also found. The hypothesis of the military confrontation was rejected, like all the previous ones. From time to time, lava begins to boil in the lake, sweeping away all living things in its path. In nature, there are sulfur lakes. People avoid them so as not to put their lives at risk, but it doesn't always work out. So in 1985, Lake Nyos in Cameroon claimed 1,746 lives. The explosion of carbon monoxide accumulated in the bottom sediments was very strong. People from nearby settlements suffered. There is a high concentration of alkali in the water of Lake Natron in Tanzania. People don't even come close to this murderous reservoir, but no matter what, the deadly lake every year takes the lives of wild animals who come to drink. In 1960, the composition of the water of Lake Roopkund was tested. The results of the research gave rise to new guesses, new hypotheses. The water of the mystical lake did not pose a threat. Okay, but then what killed hundreds of people? There is a hypothesis as to what happened at Roopkund at the beginning of the 19th century. The mysterious lake borders on the sacred mountain Nanda Devi for Hindus. That's what the lake borders on. And it is also located on the pilgrimage itinerary of the cult of the goddess. It is Parvati, the wife of the many-armed Shiva, who is blamed for the deaths of hundreds of people. A religious custom prescribed to make pilgrimages in honor of the goddess every 12 years. In ancient times, King Jasdaval went to the mountain Nanda Devi with his entire court. He was surrounded by a retinue of courtiers, among whom were servants, actors, and musicians. The pregnant wife of the king asked to make a pass at the lake Roopkund. An heir was born there. King Jasdaval decided to immediately celebrate the happy event. Not fearing the wrath of the goddess, he began a noisy celebration. However, the celebration turned into a tragedy. A strong wind rose, snow began to fall, stones flew from the sky. It was the goddess who took off the necklace of huge pearls from her neck. Beads the size of a fist fell on the king and his entourage. According to this legend, all the people who were at the lake that day died. Researchers believe, actually, that there may be some truth to this legend that comes from actually 19th century. Some historians say the remains belong to the great Dogra warrior Zorawar Singh's army that lost its way while returning from Tibet. Until recently, scientists believed that all skeletons belong to those who died during one catastrophic event. In 2006, the National Geographic reportedly retrieved nearly 30 of the skeletons from Roopkund. I heard 38 also at other sources, and gave them to the Hyderabad-based Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology for detailed DNA tests, which has claimed to have discovered some vital clues about the region of their origin. The latest research surprised scientists. Biomolecular DNA analysis of 72 people have shown that these are the remains of 3 genetic groups. People came to the lake at different periods of time. In two cases, the time interval was at least 1,000 years. A group of 23 individuals dated about 800 AD or Common Era had typical South Asian ancestry. One individual dated 1800 Common Era had Southeast Asian ancestry, and 14 individuals dated 1800 Common Era had ancestry typical of the Eastern Mediterranean and specifically of the present-day people from mainland Greece and Crete. Those findings counter the theory that the individuals died in a single catastrophic event. The radiocarbon dating further suggests that the older South Asian remains were deposited over an extended period of time, while the younger Eastern Mediterranean and Southeast Asian remains were deposited during a single event. We were extremely surprised by the origin of Roopkund skeletons. The presence of people with ancestors from the Eastern Mediterranean suggests that the lake was not just interesting to locals, but also attracted visitors from all over the world. According to the scientist Edion Harn from Harvard University, this data reflect the importance of radiocarbon analysis because it was previously assumed that skeletons appeared on the Lake Roopkund as a result of the catastrophic event, and that's according to California scientist Douglas Kennett. The examinations have not yet given an answer to the main question. As the researchers emphasize, it is still unclear what led people to the reservoir and how they died. Due to the fact that only 38 skeletons have been thoroughly studied so far, it is quite logical to assume that out of the many hundreds of people who died there, there are people of other origins. The lake is flanked by a rock face named Junar Gali to the north and a peak named Chandaniya Kot to the east. A religious festival is held at the alpine meadow of Bedni Bugayal every autumn with nearby villages participating. A larger celebration, the Nanda Devi Raj Jat, takes place once every 12 years at Roopkund, during which the goddess Nanda is worshipped. The lake is covered with ice for most of the year, with the best time to trek would be in the autumn, according to people who actually trek there. That would be mid-September to October. The count of mysterious human skeletons strewn around the Roopkund Lake in higher Garhwal Himalayas seems to have dwindled over the past few years. And that's very interesting because sources report that in 2017, the large number of skeletons around the icy Roopkund Lake are being taken away by tourists and trekkers, besides curious researchers, and thus posing a threat to the historical and religious existence of the ancient water body. People are taking away the skeletons and remains on mules, as the area is totally devoid of human population and there is no security. By the way, in 2013, scientists have concluded that the skeletons of about 200 people discovered near the frozen lake belong to the people of the 9th century Indian tribe who died due to hailstorms. But scientists have now found out that the skeletons were of pilgrims and locals, as the bodies dated to around 850 AD. Research reveals that the skeletons were of two main groups, one a family group and the other who were relatively short. That's the news from there. This is a very interesting part of India. Ancient rock paintings, rock shelters, Paleolithic age stone tools, hundreds of thousands of years old, and megaliths provide evidence that the mountains of the region have been inhabited since prehistoric times. And Uttarakhand is often referred as the Dev Bhumi, the land of gods, due to its religious significance and numerous Hindu temples and pilgrimage centers found throughout the state. Uttarakhand is known for its natural environment of the Himalayas. It borders on the Tibet Autonomous Region of China to the north, the Indian province to the east, and the Indian states Uttar Pradesh and Himachal Pradesh to the west and northwest. And it's fascinating, of course, and I will continue to bring you more stories about India, its ancient mysteries. And I also urge you to remember that there are hypotheses and beliefs that there are underground tunnels under the Himalayas and other Asian localities, of course. Ancient tunnels that belong to a civilization that had existed long ago and may still exist today. It's just something I wanted to mention, and you can find more on this hypothesis in my other videos. And I always try to recall and urge people to read books of Andrew Thomas, who was a Russian who also escaped from communists and grew up in Australia, and Andrei Tomaszewski, Andrew Thomas in English, and authored a number of fascinating books on what you can call as ancient aliens, subjects, paranormal phenomena, and so forth. If you like my research, please support me through the links you will find in the description to this video, and I'll bring you more videos, of course, about India, Eurasia, Russia, lands around Russia, and other places where I did my own research years ago. Please like my channel, please tell others about it, and thank you for your attention to my work.